everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mariah and I'm really happy to have you here. If you're one of my returning subscribers, thank you so much. I was really overwhelmed by the amount of support that I got on my BookTube newbie tag. Thank you all so much, and it means so much to me. Today we are going to go over my April wrap-up, which is also my OWLs Magical Read-a-thon wrap-up. In the month of April, I read 7 books, and I'm going to go through them chronologically and tell you guys a little bit about them as I go along. So the first book I read on April 1st was The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. The Catcher in the Rye satisfied the owl of arithmancy to read something that was outside of your comfort zone. I don't normally read postmodernist literature, and I'm not big on coming of age stories all that much. This book delved into a couple days in the life of a young man who is bored with his boarding school. He has decided that he's going to run away, and he does, and it follows his adventure. This really delved into the ideas of sex and teenage angst and that feeling of not really fitting in, but also really wanting to fit in. It was a solid 3-star read for me. Like I said, I'm not really into postmodernist literature, and this version was a gift, so it's going to stay on my shelf. The next book I read was Michael Crichton's Lost World. This was just an extra book I read. I didn't have an owl for this. I was just part of the way through it when the month started. This is the sequel to Jurassic Park, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park series is very heavily science-based. It can be a bit dry at times and a bit dull, but once the action picks up, it continuously works. I would highly recommend this for people who really liked the movies and don't mind drier science fiction. Next I read The Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. This satisfied the owl of Transfiguration, which was a book that had shapeshifting in it. The Shadow of the Fox tells the story of a young half-kitsune girl who is charged with the protection of part of a scroll that will summon the great Kami dragon, who will grant a wish for those who get the scroll and summon it. It's told from 3 points of view, 2 main point of view and one additional point of view. So it's told from Yumiko, the young kitsune girl, Tatsumi, Kage Tatsumi, or Tatsumi is how he's referred in the book, who is a Shadow Clan shinobi sent to get the scroll from Yumiko's temple, and a girl named Suki. This was a 4 out of 5 star read for me because of the last half, I would say. When the book starts out, it's in 3rd person, and you're following Suki. When the next chapter starts, you're now following Yumiko, and it's in 1st person, and there is no telling, like, the first couple of chapters you kind of have to realize that there is no announcement of which perspective the book is going to be in. This really reminded me of a anime in the fact that it starts off really slow. You kind of get this ragtag bunch of people that are brought together. There's even a sort of filler arc in there if you're familiar with anime at all, and then it wraps up magnificently. I would have given this book 2 stars and DNF'd at page 150. I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad I was reading this for a readathon because it's great, and I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel, which is now out. I believe this is a trilogy. And it involves, so this is also an own voices story based on Japanese folklore. So it has to do with yokai and kami and various shapeshifters and things like that. This was, like I said, well, this was a 3.75 out of 5 stars for me. I recommend this if you really like anime, if you like Japanese folklore or mythology in general, and if you don't mind pushing through the first half. Next I read, this is the Owl Crate cover. Next I read My Plain Jane by Cynthia Hand, Bertie, Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is the second, it's a companion book to My Lady Jane, and this satisfied the prompt of Ancient Runes, a book with a heart on the cover. There are 2 little hearts on the cover. I don't know if you guys can see that or how well you guys can see that. I'm still working out my camera setup. This was billed to me as a retelling of Jane Eyre, which is my favorite classic novel. For me, this wasn't so much a retelling as an adaptation. The book follows Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, and Alexander Blackwood. And it's an adaptation in that it has a lot of the same characters as Jane Eyre. There are some aspects of the plot that are brought in, such as her going to Thornfield and meeting Mr. Rochester and even falling in love with Mr. Rochester. I don't think that's a spoiler because it's Jane Eyre. But it also incorporates some other elements, such as Jane Eyre can see ghosts. It incorporates Charlotte Bronte as she's writing the story. And it was a good book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It's not really my cup of tea. I wasn't really jiving with the writing style of that much. The authors had a very unique thing where they would put their comments about the book or about what was happening in the book in parentheses in the middle of the paragraph. So that was kind of hard for me. And overall, 3 out of 5. It was a good book. I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not. I might, because it is a Jane Eyre adaptation, not so much a retelling, and it wasn't really what I was looking for when I picked it up. After that, I read Mrs. Jeffries Wins the Prize by Emily Brightwell. This satisfied the owl that I needed for my mermaid linguistics, which was zoology, which was to read a book that started with M. This is a cozy mystery set in Victorian England, and it is the 34th in a series. Like many cozy mysteries, you don't have to have read the previous books. I hadn't before I picked this up. This was a 5 out of 5 star read for what it was. If you're looking for a cozy mystery that involves a ragtag group of characters, a really interesting plot line, and a new take on the cozy mystery, this would be it. The story is about Mrs. Jeffries, who is the housekeeper for Inspector Witherspoon. And Inspector Witherspoon is called in to investigate the murder of a man in the Mayfair Orchid and Exotic Plant Society, one of the members' greenhouses. And the story itself was fascinating. It was one of those stories that keeps you guessing till the very end. I thought I knew who the killer was, and I was like, well, this is going to be boring because I already know, and it wasn't. So, highly recommend if you're looking for a cozy mystery. I borrowed this from my dear friend Kim, so now I will be returning that to her. Next I read Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. This satisfied my History of Magic owl, and it was my workbook. It's relatively short. It's the 3rd in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. It's not the strongest of the Discworld series that I've read. However, I did give it 5 out of 5 stars. It tells the story of a young woman named Esk, who is supposed to be the 8th son of an 8th son, and turns out to be the 8th child of an 8th son. She is given the powers of a wizard by accident and is taken under the wing of the local witch, Granny Weatherwax. In the Discworld, men are wizards and women are witches, and that's that. And Esk has both the abilities of a witch and the powers of a wizard, so Granny Weatherwax has to swallow her own prejudices to help her get into the Unseen University in Ankh-Morpork. You can read this as an independent novel, as a standalone, but it is really fun to build out the series, and I highly recommend the Discworld series if you're looking for something that tackles social issues without the seriousness of some other books, and if you're looking for a really funny, lighthearted read, this was a 5 out of 5 star read for me. I love Terry Pratchett. The last book I read in the month of April, and I pushed it to the end, I finished this April 29th, the OWLs Magical Read-a-thon ended April 30th, was The House of Salt and Sorrows. This is the owl crate cover. This was written by Aaron A. Craig. It is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which is a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, and was one of my personal favorite fairy tales growing up. This tells the story of Anna Lee, who is the 6th daughter of the Thomas 12, or the Thomas dozen, and her older sisters are dying one by one. And each death is more gruesome than the last, and they don't know why. The townspeople are beginning to think that they're cursed, she's beginning to believe that they're cursed, and they find a way to go dancing every night through this magical portal, and she's beginning to wonder who or what are they dancing with. This trigger warnings for suicide, burning, death of a loved one, and chronic illness. And childbirth, if that creeps you out. Childbirth. This was a 4 out of 5 star read for me, not so much because of the world building. The world building is some of the best I've read so far this year and have ever read. It was very unique. It has one of my #1 quotes for a creation story ever. However, the chapters were very short and ended abruptly, and I thought they could have been smoothed out some more. Some of the characters were inconsistent in the way that they acted, and I wasn't a huge fan of the some of the insta-love aspects of this. I felt that some things could have been smoothed out more, and some things could have been lessened. But Anna Lee is a really strong character, and I really, really enjoyed reading this book. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. I'm going to keep it. I'm probably going to read whatever she writes next. This was her debut novel, so it's to be expected that there were some inconsistencies. So those are all the books that I read in April. And if you like this video, please like and comment down below. Share with your friends, and a lot of fun to participate in it. So thank you to G over at Book Roast. You guys should really check her out. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. All the best coffee, wine, and books to you.